available in paperback and e-readers. Isis, Dark Incubus. The goddess next door gets enthralled in a romantic entanglement with an evil incubus in this all-new Isis series adventure. Get your copy of Isis, Dark Incubus in paperback and e-readers today. Better get the cool slower, y'all, cause we're having us a barbecue. Now available in paperback and e-readers. John Haynes, 1987. Learn lessons about life and teenage love in the 1980s in this coming-of-age John Haynes story. Get your copy of John Haynes, 1987 in paperback and e-readers at Amazon.com and online booksellers everywhere. I got a comment on my video about Anton Daniels, Corey Holcomb, and how emotional black men make black men look bad. And this viewer wanted to know how I handled a situation with a man who was ready to punch me in the face and how I handled it in an unemotional way. Well, back in 1992, when I was 18 years old and I was about 1 week away from graduation, I was coming out of a gym class when a guy wanted to get in my face about not having a girlfriend. And as this guy wanted to get in my face, he wanted to try to jack me for my G-Shock watch at the time, and I had to talk this guy down, and I had to maintain control over myself. Now, the reason why I did that was because I knew I had a lot to lose if I got into it with this guy. Had I got into it with this guy over his issues about me not having a girlfriend and him wanting to take my watch, I wasn't going to be able to get the high school diploma I had worked 5 years to get, because I had to spend an extra year in high school in order to get my high school diploma. And I understood that if I got into it with this dude and gave into my feelings as related to my anger, I wasn't going to be able to, graduate from high school, and 2, I would be leaving that school with a criminal record. I knew that at 18 years old, if I got into it with this dude who was underage, I would be the one who would be dealing with an assault charge, and I would be the one with a record at 18 years old. So I understood back then that, yeah, this dude want to get into a fight with me, but if I get into the fight with them and I look to sate my feelings for a minute as related to this dude's anger, what's going to happen is I'm going to lose out on things that are more important to me. And this is where I come from the basis of my whole arguments as related to a man maintaining his intangibles, because I knew back then in 1992, at 18 years old, again, a man could wind up losing everything just like that. He can wind up losing everything just like that if he gives into his emotions. And I also remember a time in 1987 where I almost basically wound up losing everything over a Usagi Yojimbo comic a guy stole from me in gym class in junior high school. I looked to get in a fight with this guy over this Usagi Yojimbo comic book, and basically almost got myself arrested in 1987, getting into a fight with this guy. So I understand why it's important to be able to maintain control over your emotions as a black man, because if you don't maintain control over your emotions, you can wind up giving into those feelings and then having to deal with severe consequences that could basically derail your entire life. And I thank God my life wasn't derailed at 13 years old, and I thank God that it was not derailed back then, because about a week later, my brother took me to Forbidden Planet, where they had a stack of those Usagi Yojimbo comic books that this guy stole, and I basically, for the first time, felt, okay, this is why we don't give in to our emotions. This is why we don't fight over stuff. This is why we maintain control over your emotions, because you could wind up losing everything, all because you are caught up in things like your male pride as related to so-called taking your respect in the street with your fist, you could wind up losing everything for something that basically has no value whatsoever. Because I wound up buying another copy of that same Usagi Yojimbo comic book for cover price about a week later, and that was where I learned a hard lesson about learning how to maintain control over myself and learning how to handle things without giving into my emotions. And basically, 5 years later, when I ran into that dude in 1992, I basically was able to handle things in an unemotional way. This guy again wanted to start a fight with me over the fact that I didn't have a girlfriend at 18 years old. Again, business that was not his own, because at 18, when I was going to this school, what I was trying to do was trying to get my life in order, and I understood that if I wanted to graduate from this school, I needed to go out here and work through my emotions, maintain self-control, because the whole thing is that you have, again, a lot out here that you want to achieve, and if you want to achieve what you want to do in life, you have to work past your feelings in a lot of cases, and sometimes you gotta make a sacrifice, swallow your pride and make a sacrifice so that you can be able to do the things that you want to do. And sometimes when you got a dude in your face, you gotta remain calm. You gotta remain calm, because what can happen in that situation is that this person, yeah, they want to punch you in the face. They want to go out here and fight. And the whole thing is, you have to understand there are more important things you are fighting for in this world. There are more important things in this world that you are fighting for in this life. And those things take priority over this whole moment. This guy wants to start with you and look to start this whole fight with you. And that's something that sadly grown men like Anton Daniels and Corey Holcomb didn't understand. I mean, I looked at that whole live stream with Anton Daniels and Corey Holcomb, it basically again took me back to my days of being in toxic environments like IS 148 and Park West High School and even Taft High School, and seeing these grown black men getting emotional like that basically made me see that you have to continue to navigate through your emotions, something the late David Carroll tried to tell many of these black men. Again, yeah, you have the feelings of being upset or being frustrated, but you can't act on those feelings, because if you act on those feelings, there are going to be consequences for your actions that could put more important intangibles at jeopardy, such as your health, such as your safety, such as your freedom, and even your life. And if you want to be able to survive, sometimes you gotta be able to find a way to go out here and work to handle it without letting your emotions get the better of you. Because if you let your emotions get the better of you, you're the one who's gonna be out here having to deal with the police and dealing with being put into that system, and your life is going to get worse, where you're going to not go from being able to do the things that you need to do, but having to do the things that the CO tells you to do inside of the county jail or the penitentiary, where you're going to have to be dealing with Bubba, Tiny, Roscoe, Big Dave, Melvin, and Mr. Sprinkles. You're going to have to deal with them big dudes inside of that jail, all because you didn't have a moment to say, hey, let me keep my emotions under control. Let me keep my emotions in check so that I can be able to keep my freedom and keep my life. That's something that I learned, again, back in the late 80s and the 90s, going to those public schools. I learned that, again, yeah, you got folks out here who want to go out here and be ready to fight, but you got to be ready to fight for your freedom. You got to be ready to fight for your freedom, not with your hands, but with the ability to think critically. You got to be able to go out here and understand not everything is about fighting with your hands. Not everything is about looking to beat another man down, because what this guy in some cases wants to do is antagonize you into this fight, because he sees where you're going in life, and what he wants to do is derail your life like that guy wanted to do to me. Again, I'm about 1 week away from graduating high school, 1 week away from getting my diploma. This guy want to get in my face over something I have no control over. I have no control over what girls want to be, they want to be with. And this guy's mad at me, thinking, oh, you don't have a girlfriend, so you must be gay or something like that. And that's not the case at all. No, I was focused on trying to get out of this school so I can get this diploma, so I can get out of this toxic environment, because these public schools back in the 80s and the 90s, they were toxic environments. They were complete cages where you were dealing with, again, out of control and wild individuals who basically had no discipline and no self-control. And if you gave into your emotions, you basically put yourself on a road to either getting suspended or getting arrested, getting your life completely derailed, and you had to maintain strong self-control in order to survive in that environment. And that was one of the things that I had to learn, again, being in these schools, how to handle things without giving in to my emotions. Yeah, I learned that, again, you can have the feelings, you can be frustrated, you can be upset, but if you give into those feelings, if you give into those impulses, if you start fighting this other dude, if you go out here and throw hands, somebody's gonna want to throw you into jail if they don't, if the homies in the street don't look to put some lead up in you. And the whole thing is that as a man, you gotta learn how to, again, maintain control over yourself. And like the brother of logic and common sense said in his classic video, you gotta learn how to shut stuff down. You gotta learn how to shut stuff down, because, again, if you don't shut it down, these people will get you caught up in beefs, caught up in drama, and as you get caught up in them beefs and that drama, you're the one who's going to be the big loser. You're the one who's going to wind up losing, while these same folks, after they get you jammed up, be out here in these streets having they scrimp fried rice and chicken wings outside part of the street in front of a Mercedes that they possibly got, or some other thing. Again, they gonna be living their life. Meanwhile, you gonna be in the penitentiary eating all sorts of nasty chow and possibly trading your dignity and your backside and your front side for some commissary. I mean, this is what many black men don't think about. No, they just sit there, and again, they don't maintain self-control as related to themselves. They go out here and let anything fly out their mouth. And after they let anything fly out their mouth, like we saw in the case of Anton Daniels, basically guys like Corey Holcomb, they go out here, they get emotional, they get riled up, they get worked up, and they basically think, oh, I'm going to get in this dude's face and look to fight this dude. But then when you wind up going out here to fight this dude, as related to, again, looking to save your face, you wind up losing everything. That's what happens to so many black men. And I saw so many black boys back basically when I was growing up jam themselves up with, again, felony records, getting into fights with other people, derailing their whole lives, derailing their lives as related to their academic education in high school, and then derailing themselves by getting a felony on their record. And when you get a felony on your record, it becomes just that much harder for a black man to go out here and be able to get himself a job. I mean, it's already hard for a guy like me with a college degree and no record to get a job out here at one of these businesses, but you make it twice as hard on yourself, because if you don't have self-control, other people will be controlling you, and if those folks can get control over you, it's basically game over, because the system of white supremacy will basically use these individuals to jam you up. And as they use them to jam you up, you're the one who's going to be losing. You're the one who's going to be losing as related to this situation because, yeah, this dude may want to punch you in the face and you might want to go out here and fight this dude, but you'll be fighting for a lot of things as related to your life. If you give into that impulse, you'll be fighting for your rest of your life, fighting for, again, trying to get scraps as related to life. Because if you get into it with this dude and you get a record, you're going to be fighting even that much harder to be able to pick up the pieces of your life once you get out of jail or juvie. You're going to be fighting that much harder as related to things. Because in my day back then, again, I've seen guys, again, start to go from, again, punching a guy in the face to this turning into something lethal with firearms and people getting shot up. Again, you got to learn how to maintain self-control and learn how to resolve conflicts. I mean, that's what I had to do back in 1992. That's what I wish I could have done in 1987. I wish I could have gone back and said, hey, that comic ain't worth fighting over, because, again, that comic, when I saw it in Forbidden Planet on 59th Street, for the cover price, that was when I learned a hard lesson about, fighting these folks over something that ain't worth nothing. And that's what made me in 1992 say, hey, why would I want to fight this guy over, again, a G-Shock watch or the fact that I don't have a girlfriend, something I can't control. Again, if the girls ain't into me, they just ain't into me. And I'm not going to sit here and, again, be getting upset over another man and who he's out here getting involved with, because maybe that man is not gay. And in the case of me, I was not gay. The whole thing was if you don't see no girls in your local area that you want to get with, and most of the girls are out here getting involved with dope boys and gang members, again, you don't want to get involved with those chicks because you don't want to deal with Pookie and his nonsense. You don't want to deal with chicks who are involved with all sorts of shady dudes. No, you don't want to deal with all of that, and you want to try to, again, navigate a course for yourself where you want to go, where you can have a better quality of life. And that's what I was doing back in high school. That's what I was doing back in high school, and I still do it today, because, again, you have to understand you have too much to lose to look to get into it with some guy who's caught up in his feelings, because you can't let his feelings cost you your freedom. No, you can't let some other dude's feelings cost you your freedom, because you're the one in control of yourself. And with you being in control of yourself, you got to look out for you, and you got to look out for your personal and professional and personal reputation. You got to look out for yourself in these streets, and part of looking out for yourself in these streets is understanding you got to watch how you move in these streets, and part of being able to move in these streets is maintaining control over your emotions, because the one thing that can undermine a guy is himself getting out here and letting his feelings get the better of himself. Because if a guy lets his feelings get the better of himself, he can go from being a free man to winding up being another number inside of the penal system. Now, I hope this answers the question for the viewer of how I dealt with a man ready to punch me in the face and handled it in an unemotional way. This is something I've had to deal with ever since I was, again, in junior high school and high school, because there was a lot of emotional dudes back then who had poor self-control. And I wanted to, again, get my diploma, wanted to get my education, and I had to deal with these folks. Again, deal with these folks all the time, and I understand that I got to maintain control over myself if I want to be able to survive, to get to the next day, to be able to do the things that I want to do. And I go in depth on this in the story John Haynes, 1987, where I show the consequences of what happens when you go out here and handle things with your fists. When you handle things with your fists, again, I show what happens in John Haynes, 1987, and you can pick that book up on Amazon.com in paperback and Kindle format. You can also find it at other online booksellers like Drafted Digital, Google Play, Barnes & Noble, and big box retailers like Walmart and Target. And if you want to see me talk more about life and how to handle conflicts and other issues, you can drop a donation to the Patreon, the PayPal, or the Cash App by clicking the links in the description box. That's all I have to say for this video. You can comment, rate, and subscribe. Now available in paperback and Kindle Unlimited, E-Steam: The Sands of Time. It's action and adventure in ancient Egypt in this terrific teen time travel romance. Get your copy of E-Steam: The Sands of Time at your favorite online bookseller today. Support Black-owned and Black-operated digital broadcast media. www.niceradionetwork.com. Nice Radio Network, broadcasting 24 hours a day, 7 days a week.